Hello, my name's Duncan and welcome to Back Away with Knocking Bath Books. Well, today we're going to do some optimistic science fiction. The world's in a bit of a state. So let's go some optimistic times, feel the love for the future. You know, all a la Star Trek. I did a video like this about a year and a half ago, and so I thought I'd sort of add some more to it. I will put a link to the original one up there somewhere. So this is 7 or 8 books, because I've got a couple of books with, depending on who I'm talking about, and hopefully you might find these quite interesting. So let's start with number 1. So number 1 is an Isaac Asimov one. Isaac Asimov always, most of his stuff's positive, but this is a nice collection of short stories for him. It's called Robot Dreams. It was released originally the mid-90s. It's got some of his older stuff in and some of his newer stuff at the time. It's got stories like Franchise and the machine that won the war, and I'm a big fan of Asimov, as you probably know. His short stories are always very good, very interesting, and there's always a sort of what I like to call Asimovian type protagonists in a lot of them. And this one's just a good start if you've not read any Asimov short stories. Good place to start. It's got Little Lost Robot, which is one of his original robot stories. I think that one's in, is it in iRobot originally? I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, good one to start off with, I think, for Asimov there. So yeah, so number 1 is Robot Dreams by Isaac Asimov. So now let's go on to the second one. The second one is actually, it's going to be 2 books, because one author, John Scalzi. I'm not a huge fan of modern science fiction, as most people know, because I think it sort of gets it wrong a lot of the time. But there's actually 2 selections of quite modern science fiction in this selection, which might surprise them. But this is John Scalzi. First one is the Kaiju Preservation Society, which is just a lot of fun. It's about an organisation that, in a parallel world, looks after kaiju, big Godzilla-like monsters, and the problems that involves. And that's a great, great fun book, and I recommend anyone to read it. And the second book, which was the second book of Scalzi's I read, was Red Shirts, which is, if you're a big Star Trek fan, you know what happens to people in the red shirts. And it's a story around that. I was a little disappointed in bits of it, but it's still a very, very enjoyable book. I've heard other Scalzi stuff recommended. I think Old Man's War, but I'm not big up on his work. But it was both those books really enjoyable, really positive. You come away feeling quite happy after them. So yeah, so that was my number 2 picks, and now on to number 3. So number 3 pick is Robert Silverberg, and it's Lord Valentine's Castle. And this is one of the books that sort of crosses the fantasy science fiction sort of boundary. It's science fiction that feels like fantasy, or fantasy that feels like science fiction. Either way, it is about Lord Valentine, hence the name, and his planet Madripoor, and it's basically him saving the planet from tyranny. And that's basically it. It's written in wonderful, Silverberg is a great, great writer, and his prose is lovely to read, and it's fun. There's the second book is Madripoor Chronicles, and there's a third book, which I cannot remember the title off the top of my head. But yeah, Lord Valentine's Castle, and I think it came out about 1980 originally. I remember reading it when it came out, because I'm old. So now let's go on to my 4th choice. Is my 4th choice? Yes, it will be. 4th choice. Quite a straightforward one. Contact Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan, the great scientist. If you've seen the film of this, it's great, but the book is fantastic. Well written, well researched, obviously, because of all the science that's in there. And it's about the first contact with aliens, and it's a great book, and it's a really nice sort of feel-good book. The ending, I'm not going to say anything about the ending, but yeah, obviously. But yeah, Carl Sagan Contact. And then let's go on to my next pick. Next one is a Frederick Bound story from 1953. The lights in the sky are stars. And this is Frederick Brown, who wrote the short story Arena, if you don't know, which was a famous episode of Star Trek with the Gorn. If you haven't read the short story of that, it's well worth reading. It's flying around everywhere. I think it might be out of copyright, but I know there's copies of it online. But yeah, Arena is worth reading. But this story is one of his novels, shortish novel, and it's about a man who basically, his trials and tribulations to build a spaceship to go to Saturn. He'd already travelled to Mars, and it's like some political stuff in there. But it's overall feel good bit, even if the main protagonist is a bit of a lunatic. I think it's probably the best thing. You've got some of the, it's got a bit of 50 sort of 7 sensibilities into it, which you would expect. 1953 it was written. but it's a really enjoyable read, and Frederick Brown's really good, solid writer. So let's go on to the next one. Next one is from Spider Robinson. He's not a spider. I promise you that, not a real spider. It's Callahan's Cross Time Saloon. And this is almost like a collection. There's 2 or 3 books in the series. Spider Robinson, most of his stuff is quite positive. But this one's about a bar run by Callahan, and all these aliens and come in, and it's like tells all these stories, and it's like any bar that you listen to. The barman listens to the woes of the patrons, and in here you've got an ethical vampire, time travelers, space aliens, and you hear all their stories, and it's fun, and there's lots of whiskey drunk, and yeah, really, really good fun and really good positive read. And I said it's more like a collection of short stories, but Spider Robinson's really, really fun to read. I only sort of discovered him in the past couple of years. He's one of these writers that I always knew the name of, but never got around to reading, so it's been quite an interesting experience. So yeah, Callahan's Cross Time Saloon. Now on to the next one. The next one is another sort of more modern book, which for me is quite weird because I said I'm not a big fan of a lot of modern science fiction. This is by Matt Haig, who's an author I've only just discovered. I've got a Kindle copy of one of his ebook of one of his other books. This is called The Humans, and it's about an alien who comes to Earth on a mission to collect some data, and he's disgusted and he hates Earth. He disguises himself as a maths professor, and it's about sort of his journey and his opening up, and it's really quite a sort of book of sort of discovery and self-discovery, because all at the beginning of the book he just wants to go home because the planet he's from is a big utopia and everything's perfect. But it's like a journey of self-discovery, and it's almost how he came to love the human sort of thing. But Matt Haig's a really, really good writer. I really enjoyed his book. The first one is I'd read, and so I'd recommend that one, The Humans by Matt Haig. Nice, good, positive book. And the final book is by John Varley. It's Red Thunder. It was published in 2003. John Varley's been around for quite a few decades. I've read a few of his books. This nothing to do with Blue Thunder, which was the film about the helicopter. So if you get to see it, it's a great film. So Red Thunder is about, it's a bunch of sort of people who decide to build a spaceship from scrap to get to Mars before America and China. When I originally read the synopsis, it sort of reminded me of, there was a TV program in the 1970s called Salvage One about a guy who built a spaceship out of scrap to fly to the moon, and that was fun. It doesn't exist on DVD. There's some bad VHS copies flying around, but there's that one. But yes, Red Thunder, John Varley, and I said it is more of a sort of homage to sort of Highland Juveniles, because it feels very along that vein, and Highland Juveniles have got this sort of oval feel to them, and I'm still convinced that some of those Juveniles are some of Highland's best work. But yeah, it's great fun. There's apparently some sequels. I've not read the sequels, but Red Thunder, bunch of people trying to build a spaceship to get to, and their trials and tribulations to get to Mars. So that's the last one of the 7 or 8 books I've just told you about. So if you're in the comments down below, if you list me any more some positive, life-affirming science fiction, or makes you feel good, because that's what we want. We don't want everything to be dystopian and dull and grey, do we? Well, I know we all enjoy that. So, yep. So I hope that list has given you a few ideas, and I hope you enjoyed my picks, and I will speak to you all very soon. And bye-bye for now.